Hello, it's Saturday, the 21st of March. You're tuned in to our 6 p.m. newscast coming to you from Arirang's news centre in Seoul. Thanks ever so much for joining us. I'm Mark Broome. Our top story this evening, the top diplomats of South Korea, China and Japan met in Seoul on this Saturday for the first time in nearly 3 years. Ahead of their trilateral meeting, which got underway roughly 30 minutes ago, South Korea's Foreign Minister Yun Byung-se held back-to-back meetings with his Chinese and Japanese counterparts. Our Hwang Sung-hee starts us off.
Following a near 2-hour meeting with his South Korean counterpart Yun Byung-se on Saturday, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi said the talks were very productive.
We discussed all issues of mutual interest regarding our bilateral relations and reached a broad shared perception. We had a very good conversation.
The meeting comes a matter of days after a senior Chinese official voiced Beijing's opposition to the possible deployment to South Korea of the U.S.-led THAAD missile defense system. Amid heightened attention on whether China's top diplomat would make an even stronger remark on the matter, an official at Seoul's foreign ministry said THAAD was not on the agenda for Saturday's talks. As for the China-led Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, Wang reiterated Beijing's hopes South Korea would sign up as a founding member, to which Yun said the issue is under review. Yun also met with Japanese Foreign Minister Fumio Kishida and agreed to encourage progress on their bilateral talks aimed at resolving Tokyo's wartime sexual enslavement of Korean women. With this year marking the 50th anniversary of the normalization of their diplomatic ties, the minister agreed to hold a series of joint government-led events and to work on improving relations. On that note, Kishida invited Yun to visit Japan, to which the Korean minister said he will look into making a trip at an appropriate time. While the top diplomats have gathered for the first time in nearly 3 years, there are doubts that the trilateral talks will ease tensions in Northeast Asia. This as the meeting leaves out the main issues at hand involving the territorial and historical disputes. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
And earlier in the day, President Park Geunhye met with the 3 foreign ministers at her office, while President Park is expected to have sought Beijing and Tokyo's cooperation in resolving the North Korean nuclear issue and achieving regional stability. There's speculation over whether or not she specifically talked about a trilateral leaders summit. Amid strained ties over historical and territorial differences, she had expressed hopes to meet her Chinese and Japanese counterparts. Other issues of concern are the compensation of Korean women forced into wartime sex slavery by the Japanese military, as well as Korea joining the China-led AIIB and the deployment of the US THAAD missile defense system to the Korean peninsula. Now, while experts have different opinions about whether or not North Korea is able to launch a nuclear missile, the North's ambassador to Britain says his country can and would not think twice about doing so if it felt cornered. Now, Cho Yu-sun reports.
The North Korean ambassador to Britain says his country could launch a nuclear weapon if it felt threatened. Speaking to British broadcaster Sky News, Hyun Ak-bong added that if a sparkle of fire is made on the Korean peninsula, it would turn into a nuclear war. Asked again if his country was prepared to fire off a nuclear missile,
anytime, yes. And will you? Well, if the United States strike us, we should strike back.
Stressing that North Korea does not say empty words, Hyun said the United States does not have a monopoly on nuclear weapon strikes.
We are ready for conventional war with conventional war. We are ready for nuclear war with nuclear war.
The interview was broadcast as South Korea and the U.S. continue their annual military drills, which Pyongyang considers a war game. The North Korean diplomat's claims come as experts in South Korea and the U.S. have different views about the North's capability to miniaturize a nuclear warhead. The South Korean government doesn't believe the North is capable of it yet. U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Tony Blinken recently told the U.S. House Foreign Affairs Committee that North Korea has made much more progress than Iran on its nuclear development program. He added past surveillance on the North's nuclear activities was less stringent than the current system on Iran's nuclear program. U.S. Republican Representative Jeff Fortenberry went as far to suggest recently that Seoul and Washington jointly set up a nuclear command as a means to deter Pyongyang's nuclear advancement. Radio Free Asia, meanwhile, reported the UN Security Council is soon expected to review whether North Korea violated UN resolutions with its recent short-range missile launch. Choi Yu-sun, Arirang News.
The US military is adding an extra 400 soldiers to its force in South Korea. The Pentagon says the troops are members of an army battalion equipped with the multiple launch rocket system, which is an armored vehicle that fires surface-to-surface rockets. The soldiers are expected to arrive in May and will be deployed on a 9-month rotation. The US Army says the battalion will help it better deter North Korea's artillery threats, but is not linked to any increase in tension on the Korean peninsula. The deployment will bring the number of American troops stationed in South Korea to just under 29,000. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has reportedly been formally invited to address US Congress when he travels to Washington at the end of next month or in early May. Citing diplomatic sources in Washington, AFP reports Abe will become the first Japanese leader to ever address both houses of the Congress and the first to address any part of Congress in over half a century. The report says an official announcement is expected soon. Now, there has been a lot of opposition to the invitation because of Abe's stance on Japan's historical wrongdoings, particularly its military's use of tens of thousands of women and girls, many of whom were Korean, as sex slaves during World War II. His critics, including Korea and China, are worried Abe will use the speech to present a revisionist account of past events. Now, NASA has uncovered the first clear evidence that there's hot water inside one of Saturn's many moons. Scientists say this finding increases the chance of finding life beyond Earth. Our Park Geunhye has the details.
This is Enceladus, just one of more than 60 moons that orbit Saturn. But scientists say it might be the first place outside Earth that hosts life in our solar system. Latest data from NASA's Cassini space probe shows there's likely an ocean of hot water between the moon's rocky core and its thick icy surface. A study based on the data was recently published in the scientific journal Nature, and if confirmed, Enceladus would be the only other known body in the solar system besides Earth with an active hydrothermal system. Using gravity measurements from Cassini, scientists already found hints of a liquid ocean in the moon's southern hemisphere. The new finding comes from tiny rock particles found near Saturn over 10 years ago. In recent years, scientists discovered the rocks are made of silica, which is commonly found in sand. And after further experiments, they concluded the particles can only be produced when hot water first meets a rocky core, then shoots up to the moon's icy surface. Other planets and moons have traces of thermal springs and geysers, but this is the first time that scientists have found signs of ongoing activity.
The Saturn moon, Enceladus, has liquid water and heat reacting to each other, which is a new discovery that raises the possibility that there may be living organisms.
Scientists are working on follow-up missions to Enceladus, but they say it will take decades for them to collect potential evidence of life from the distant moon. Park Geunhye, Arirang News.
The United States is planning to almost double the scope and size of its anti-ballistic missile capabilities over the next few years. In a written testimony submitted to the U.S. House Armed Services Committee's Strategic Forces Subcommittee, Lieutenant General David Mann said the U.S. is planning to increase its THAAD missile defense force to 7 batteries by 2019 from the current 4. The US has made it known that it wants to deploy another THAAD battery to South Korea to defend against North Korean ballistic missile threats. The possible deployment is a highly controversial issue both inside and outside of South Korea. Russia and China are deeply opposed to THAAD being placed on what amounts to their regional doorstep, seeing it as a threat to their national security. More than 130 people have been killed in suicide attacks at 2 mosques in the Yemeni capital Sana'a. The group that calls itself Islamic State has claimed responsibility for the attacks, which left a further 260 people wounded, many seriously. 4 suicide bombers are thought to have taken part in the attacks. The IS group has warned of a flood of attacks to come. In Syria on Friday, more than 20 people were killed in an Islamic State attack when 2 car bombs exploded at a Kurdish festival in the northeast of the country. The British-based monitoring group, the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, says the bombings in the predominantly Kurdish city also wounded 80 people. Now, before we go, taking a brief look at the weather, and it's quite a mild evening in Seoul, but there is a high level of yellow dust over most of the central region, so do limit your outdoor activities and keep your windows closed while you're inside. Temperatures will return to seasonal norms on Sunday, and the bad air could linger, unfortunately. Now, Seoul will see a high of 13 degrees tomorrow, but it should be sunny. For those of you watching in other parts of the world, here's a look at the global forecast. That's all we have for now. Do enjoy the rest of your Saturday wherever you're watching us, and stay tuned to Arirang TV. We'll be back with our next newscast at 10 p.m. Korea time. So until then, goodbye.